The summer heat hung over the town like a fever thick and unrelenting, making every breath feel like a stolen secret. I'm Laura, and this isn't my story, not really. I'm just the one who saw it unfold, the one who couldn't look away when the air turned heavy with sin. It was my friend Rachel and her swimming instructor Ethan, a man with a body carved from discipline and eyes that burned right through you, promising things you knew you shouldn't want. Rachel was the spark, and he was the flame that caught her. Rachel was 24, all grace and fire, with a laugh that could stop a room and a body that made you notice. She'd signed up for private swimming lessons at the community pool, trying to shake off a stale marriage that weighed her down like wet clothes. Her husband Mark was a good man, steady but distant, always buried in work. Ethan, though, was something else, 32, lean and tanned, with a voice that slid over you like warm water. I saw it the first time I tagged along to her lesson, the way the pool's chlorinated air seemed to crackle when they were near each other. I was there that afternoon, sitting on the bleachers, the sun slanting through the high windows, turning the pool into a sheet of liquid gold. Rachel was in the water, her swimsuit clinging to her curves, her hair slicked back, catching the light. Ethan stood at the edge, his shorts low on his hips, his chest bare and glistening with sweat. "Relax, Rachel," he said, his voice smooth, commanding, like he was coaxing something more than just her stroke. She looked up at him, her eyes wide, her lips parted, and I felt it, a current sharp and electric running through the humid air. They moved through the lesson, his hands guiding her arms, correcting her form, lingering just a second too long. I watched from my perch, my skin prickling, caught in the pull of something I couldn't name. Rachel's laughter echoed off the tiles, too bright, too reckless, and Ethan's smile was slow, deliberate, like he knew exactly what he was doing. When she climbed out of the pool water streaming down her body, his eyes followed, tracing the lines of her hips, the curve of her waist. She didn't shy away. She stood there, dripping, her breath quick, her gaze locked on his. "Nice work today," he said, stepping closer, his voice low, intimate, like a secret meant just for her. She smiled, her towel draped loosely over her shoulders, barely covering the swell of her chest. "Thanks to you," she said, her voice soft, teasing, but edged with something dangerous. The air between them was alive, pulsing like the moment before a storm breaks. I shifted in my seat, my heart thudding. I should have left, but I didn't. I stayed, a witness to something I wasn't supposed to see. The lesson ended, but they didn't part ways. Rachel lingered by the pool, her towel slipping to the ground, her body exposed in the fading light. Ethan was there, too close, his hand brushing her arm as he handed her a water bottle. Their fingers touched, and I saw it, the spark, the flare of something forbidden. She didn't pull away. She leaned in, her breath shallow, her eyes searching his face. "You're good at this," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. He grinned, his eyes dark, unreadable. "You have no idea," he said, and the words hung there, heavy with promise. I mumbled some excuse about a phone call and slipped outside, but I didn't go far. Through the glass doors I saw them still by the pool, the world narrowing to just the two of them. His hand was on her waist now, his fingers splaying across her damp skin, pulling her closer. Her head tilted back, her lips parting, and I saw the way her body responded, the way her hands rested on his chest, like she was testing the weight of her own desire. "Relax," he murmured again, his voice a low growl, and then he kissed her, slow at first, then deeper, hungrier, like he was drowning in her. The kiss was a storm, a collision of want and guilt, and I couldn't look away. His hands slid lower, gripping her hips, pulling her against him. Her swimsuit clung to her, leaving nothing to the imagination, and she gasped, her fingers digging into his shoulders, her body arching into his. It was raw, desperate, a dance of desire that left no room for reason. I felt the heat of it, the shame of it, the thrill of it like a pulse in my own veins. They were lost in each other, consumed by the fire they'd lit, and I was the witness, the one who saw it all and did nothing. I slipped away, the summer heat pressing against me, but it couldn't burn away what I'd seen. Rachel, so reckless, so alive in her desire. Ethan, a man who knew exactly what he was doing. And me, the fool who saw it all and did nothing. I drove home, the sunset bleeding red across the sky, but I couldn't shake the image of their kiss, the way her body melted into his, the way the pool's light caught the hunger in her eyes. I knew it wasn't over, it was just beginning. Days later, I saw Rachel at a cafe, her fingers wrapped around a coffee mug, her eyes distant like she was chasing a memory she couldn't catch. She looked different, sharper, like a woman who'd tasted something forbidden and couldn't forget the flavor. I sat across from her, my heart heavy with what I'd seen. I wanted to ask about Ethan, about that kiss, about the way his hands claimed her, but the words wouldn't come. She didn't bring it up either, just smiled, that half smile of hers, the one that hid more than it showed. "You okay?" I asked, my voice too careful. She shrugged, her sundress slipping down her shoulder, revealing a faint mark, a shadow maybe, or something else. "Just restless," she said, her voice low, like she was confessing to the coffee instead of me. "The pool. It's too much sometimes. Too intense." I knew she wasn't talking about the pool. She was talking about him, Ethan. The way he filled every moment, every silence with that slow-burning intensity of his. I didn't push her. I couldn't. But I saw it in her eyes, the hunger, the guilt, the thrill of crossing a line she couldn't uncross. She leaned forward, her perfume sharp and sweet, and said, "You ever feel like you're drowning in something you can't name?" I nodded, though I didn't know what she meant. Not really. But I'd seen it that day, the way her body leaned into his, the way her breath caught when his lips met hers. It wasn't just desire. It was something deeper, something that clawed at you until you bled. That evening, I went back to the pool. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to see if the air still crackled, if the water still held their secrets. Rachel was there in the water, her strokes smooth and deliberate, her swimsuit clinging to her like a lover's touch. Ethan was at the edge, his eyes on her, his body taut like a man fighting a war with himself. The pool was empty except for them, the lights dim, casting shadows that danced across the tiles. I stood by the entrance, hidden in the dark, my pulse loud in my ears. "Rachel," he called, his voice low, rough, like he'd been holding it in too long. She climbed out of the water, her body glistening, her hair falling in wet strands across her shoulders. She walked toward him, too close, her hand brushing his arm as she reached for her towel. I saw it again, the spark, the heat, the way her fingers lingered just a second too long. He didn't move away. Instead, he looked at her, his eyes dark, unreadable, like a man staring at his own ruin. "You're making this hard," he said, but his voice was weak, like he was begging her to prove him wrong. She didn't answer, just tilted her head, her lips parting slightly. The air between them was alive, pulsing like the moment before a kiss you know you shouldn't take. I wanted to shout to break the spell, but my voice was gone, swallowed by the weight of what I was seeing. Rachel stepped closer, her bare foot brushing his, her swimsuit clinging to her curves. "What if I don't want to stop?" she whispered, so soft I barely heard it. His hand twitched like he was fighting himself, but then it was on her waist. his fingers digging into her damp skin, pulling her closer. The world seemed to slow the pool's light, wrapping them in a haze of gold and shadow. His thumb traced the curve of her hip, slow, deliberate, like he was memorizing her. She didn't pull away. Her breath was shallow, her chest rising and falling too fast. I could see it, the want, the need, the way it consumed them both. It was wrong, so wrong, but it was alive, burning brighter than anything I'd ever seen. I turned away, my face hot, my heart racing. I shouldn't have stayed, but I did, caught in the pull of their sin. When I looked back, they were closer, her hand on his chest, his fingers tangled in her wet hair. The air was thick with their heat, their guilt, their hunger. "Rachel," he said again, his voice a low growl like a man drowning. She didn't answer, just leaned into him, her lips brushing his jaw so soft it was barely a touch. But it was enough. Enough to shatter the last thread of restraint. His hand slid lower, pulling her against him, and I saw the way her body melted into his, the way her eyes closed like she was surrendering to something bigger than herself. I left, then my steps unsteady, the night pressing against me like a weight. I didn't want to see what came next, but I knew. I knew the way their bodies would move, the way their breaths would tangle, the way the pool's light would catch their sin. Rachel, so reckless, so alive in her desire. Ethan, a man who'd crossed a line he couldn't uncross. And me, the witness, the one who saw it all and did nothing. The pool house loomed behind me, its windows dark, its secrets darker. The weeks that followed were a blur of whispers and glances, each one heavier than the last. Rachel didn't talk about it, but she didn't have to. It was written all over her, in the way her eyes lingered on the empty spaces where Ethan had been, in the way her fingers trembled when she tied her hair back. I saw her less, but when I did, she was a shadow of herself caught between the thrill of what she'd done and the guilt that clawed at her soul. Ethan was no better. I caught him once at the pool, his face tight, his eyes haunted like a man who'd tasted paradise and knew he'd burn for it. Mark came home more often, his presence a stark contrast to the fire that had raged in his absence. Rachel and Ethan moved around him like ghosts, their touches careful, their smiles forced. But I saw it, the way their eyes met across the room, the way their fingers brushed when they passed each other like they couldn't help themselves. It was a secret too big to hold, a fire too hot to contain. I wanted to tell Mark to shatter the lie, but I didn't. I was complicit, bound by what I'd seen, what I hadn't stopped. One night I went back to the pool uninvited. The air was thick with the scent of chlorine and night-blooming flowers, the moon low and heavy casting shadows that danced like lovers. Rachel was in the water, her strokes slow and deliberate, her swimsuit clinging to her like a second skin. Ethan was there too, his shirt open, his chest rising and falling too fast. They didn't see me, didn't know I was there, hidden in the shadows of the bleachers. The air between them was alive, pulsing with the same heat I'd felt that first day. But now it was sharper, more desperate, like they knew the end was coming. "Rachel," he said, his voice low, raw, like a man pleading for salvation. She climbed out of the water, her body glistening, her hair falling in wet strands across her shoulders. She turned to him, her eyes wide, her lips parted, and I saw the war in her, the want, the shame, the need that burned hotter than both. "We can't keep doing this," he said. But his hand was already on her, his fingers tracing the curve of her neck, sliding down to her shoulder. She shivered, her body leaning into his, touch, her breath shallow. "Then why don't you stop?" she whispered, her voice a challenge, a dare. He didn't answer, just pulled her closer, his hands gripping her waist, his lips brushing her throat. She gasped, her fingers tangling in his hair, her body arching against his. The moonlight painted them in silver, their shadows merging into one. It was beautiful and terrible, a dance of desire and destruction. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. I was trapped, a witness to their sin, their surrender. His hand slid lower, pulling her swimsuit strap down, exposing the curve of her shoulder, the soft skin glowing in the moonlight. Her breath was ragged, her moans soft and desperate, like she was drowning in him. The night seemed to hold its breath, the world narrowing to the two of them, their bodies pressed together, their desire a living thing. "Ethan," she whispered, her voice breaking, and he answered with a kiss deep and hungry, like he was trying to consume her. I saw the way her body responded, the way her hands clutched at him, the way her eyes closed as if she could block out the world. But the world was there, waiting, ready to judge. I left before it went further, my steps silent, my heart pounding. I didn't want to see the end, but I knew it was coming. Rachel and Ethan caught in a web they'd spun themselves, bound by desire and doomed by it. The pool house loomed behind me, its windows dark, its secrets heavier than ever. I drove away, the night swallowing me, but I couldn't escape the image of them, their bodies tangled, their breaths mingling, their sin burning brighter than the moon. So here I am telling you this story, my voice shaking with the weight of it. I saw it all and I did nothing. Maybe that's my sin too. If this hit you hard, if it stirred something in you, hit that like button, share it with someone who gets it, and subscribe for more stories that cut deep. Leave a comment. Tell me what you'd have done, or don't just let it simmer. Check out the next video because trust me, the shadows have more to say. Until then, keep watching, keep feeling, and don't look away.